Millionaire took a homeless woman to his ex-fiancée's wedding. But what happened left the groom in shock. Ethan Montgomery was in his office, a vast, glass-walled room on the top floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. The afternoon sun gleamed off the white marble decor as he wrapped up a call with a business partner. His personal assistant, Grace, entered the room, carrying an elegant velvet box in her hands. "Mr. Montgomery, this just arrived for you. It's a special invitation," she said, a curious expression on her face. "Before continuing, make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers." With an impatient wave, he motioned for her to place the box on his desk and ended the call. He wasn't in the mood for surprises. Ethan liked to believe that he had seen it all, that no one dared to try and impress him anymore. With a sigh, he opened the invitation. As soon as he saw the names Victoria Harrington and Alexander Whitmore, his eyes narrowed. His heart gave a subtle jolt, but he masked the reaction, maintaining his usual stoic expression. "So, she's marrying him, Alexander Whitmore. Of course, it makes perfect sense," Ethan thought, a mix of irritation and disdain stirring inside him. Victoria, the woman he once thought he loved, had left him for a man of similar stature. They had been together for years, but in the end, she had chosen someone even more powerful. He vividly recalled her parting words the day she walked out of his life. "I want a life where I feel secure, Ethan. And honestly, with you, everything feels like a never-ending competition." "Security," he repeated silently, the word dripping with sarcasm. It was nothing more than an excuse. She wanted more wealth, more influence. He snapped the invitation shut and tossed it onto his desk. Yet, the thought of ignoring the wedding gnawed at him. If he didn't show up, she'd see him as someone who still hadn't moved on. No, he wouldn't let that happen. "Grace, clear my schedule so I can travel this Saturday. I have an important engagement," he said coolly. "Understood, sir," Grace replied before exiting the room. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his fingers interlaced behind his head, a cynical smile creeping across his face. He couldn't just show up at the wedding alone. That would be a public humiliation. No, he needed someone by his side. Someone who would draw every eye in the room. Someone who would make Victoria question every decision that had led her to this moment. "I need an escort, but not just anyone," he mused. It wouldn't be an instant celebrity actress or a well-known model. That would be too predictable. He wanted something more refined. Someone unexpected. Someone with presence, capable of turning heads and leaving everyone in awe. The plan began to take shape in his mind. Ethan poured himself a glass of whiskey and walked over to the massive window overlooking the city that never sleeps. Memories of Victoria surged within him. He recalled their first meeting at a gala in Chicago. Both had been young and ambitious, and it was as though she had seen a reflection of her own dreams in him. They had complimented each other for years, but in the end, it wasn't enough. Not enough love to hold them together. Their breakup had been a silent wound, one he carried with the bitter pride of a man scorned. Now, the opportunity to turn the tables was right in front of him. "I won't let Victoria feel victorious. Not this time," he thought to himself. He finished the whiskey in one gulp and returned to his desk, mentally sketching out the details of his plan. He needed someone mysterious, captivating, someone with high standards and undeniable presence. That was it. He'd go out and find the perfect companion. The next day, Ethan left his office and headed to a part of the city known for its strange blend of opulence and hidden poverty. Wealthy executives hurried past, paying no attention to the homeless people huddled in corners and alleyways. He wasn't there out of compassion. He believed life, in its ironic twists, would guide him to the right person. Maybe someone from a humbler background, but with the potential to shine at his side. Perhaps a call girl, beautiful yet in need of rescue. To Ethan, it was almost like a game. He could transform a life if necessary, all for the sake of his grand spectacle. What he didn't realize was that this walk through the streets would mark the beginning of something that would alter his own perspective on life. The streets were crowded, alive with the chaotic blend of honking horns, hurried footsteps, and the constant hum of conversation. Ethan walked with a focused expression, scanning each face, each woman who crossed his path. He was searching for someone who could match the grandeur of the performance he wanted to orchestrate. Yet nothing captivated him. That was when he felt a gentle tug on his sleeve. "Sir, do you have some spare change?" A husky, almost melodic female voice asked. He stopped and turned, his eyes landing on the source of the request. Before him stood a young woman, though the signs of a hard life on the streets were evident. Her disheveled hair partially obscured a pale face, but her eyes, those eyes, hit him like a punch. They were strikingly blue, almost crystalline, a sharp contrast to her otherwise worn appearance. There was something unusual about her demeanor for someone in her situation. She was tall, slender, with straight shoulders and a steady, unflinching gaze. There was no fear or shame in her eyes. For a moment, Ethan was speechless. Surprised, she asked with a sarcastic smile, "It's not every day a guy like you gets approached by an invisible woman, is it?" Ethan chuckled, but there was something in her sharp tone that made him look at her more closely. His mind began working quickly. With the right transformation, this woman could be exactly what he needed. "I don't have any spare change, but I do have a proposal," he said firmly. She raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "A proposal? Now this is getting interesting. I need someone to accompany me to a wedding. In exchange, I'll pay for a year's rent in a furnished apartment and get you a stable job. I won't go into too many details now, but it's a serious offer." She blinked a few times, clearly trying to process what he had just said. "So, let me get this straight. You find a homeless woman on the street and decide I'm the perfect candidate to be your date? Sounds more like a hidden camera prank show to me." "It's not a prank. The offer is real. Simple. You either accept or you don't." She was silent for a moment, studying him closely. This wasn't the first time she had met a cold, arrogant man in her life. He had the look of someone who always got what he wanted. But the offer was too tempting to ignore. Life on the streets was becoming unbearable. "You seem like the type who does contracts for everything. Where do I sign?" She responded with irony. Ethan let out a short laugh, surprised by her sense of humor. "You're not wrong. I'll get the contract ready. But for now, let's make sure you have a safe place to stay tonight." She took a deep breath. Trusting a stranger was risky, but what choice did she really have? "All right, let's do this." The luxury car dropped them off in front of the Regal Crest Hotel, one of the city's most prestigious establishments. Olivia, though Ethan didn't yet know her name, stepped out, glancing up at the grand, brightly lit building with a mixture of fascination and wariness. They entered through the main lobby, where the polished white marble floor reflected the light from enormous chandeliers. Olivia felt out of place but tried not to show it. The scent of expensive perfume and the sight of elegantly dressed people brought back distant, almost forgotten memories of a different life. Ethan walked up to the front desk. "I need a suite for my guest. She'll require privacy and security," he told the receptionist. After arranging the stay, he turned to Olivia. "At 8 in the morning, a team will come to take you to a beauty salon. After that, you'll go shopping for clothes and visit a dentist." She nearly choked on her own breath. A salon? Clothes? A dentist? It had been years since anyone had cared for her like that. The whole thing felt surreal. "All right, boss. What's next?" "A foot massage," she asked, her playful tone masking her disbelief. This time he didn't smile. His expression returned to its usual cold, calculating demeanor. "The next step is for you to rest. I want you ready tomorrow." Ethan called over a hotel staff member and instructed them to provide Olivia with comfortable clothes. Without another word, he bid her farewell with the same detached air he'd had when they first met. "Sleep well," those were his final words before leaving. Olivia stepped into the suite and froze for a moment. The sheer size of the room was overwhelming. Everything was too luxurious. An enormous bed with soft, pristine sheets, a leather sofa, and a bathroom with a bathtub that resembled a private pool. She closed the door behind her and took a deep breath. "Is this really happening?" she thought, still dazed by the events of the past few hours. Finally, she allowed herself to relax. She ordered a pizza, sprawled across the bed, and turned on the television, laughing when she found a classic movie playing. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt safe, far from the dangers of the streets. As she ate, she reflected on the proposal. It was risky, but maybe this was her chance to escape the misery she had been trapped in for so long. With a faint smile, she decided she would treat this moment as the beginning of a new life. "All right, Olivia, let's see where this goes," she murmured to herself before falling into a deep sleep. By 7:50 a.m., Olivia was already awake, seated in a luxurious armchair, staring out at the panoramic view from the suite. It still felt surreal to be there, but something inside her was shifting. Determination. At exactly 8 a.m., 3 people entered the suite. An assistant, a stylist, and a lawyer carrying a sleek black leather briefcase. The lawyer stepped forward and presented the contract. "Miss Harper, here are the terms we discussed. Please read through them carefully and let me know if you have any questions," the lawyer said. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "So, they know my last name. Of course, they did their homework," she thought. She took the papers and reviewed each clause with careful attention. Everything was laid out in detail. The rent, the promised job, confidentiality terms. Ethan had been meticulous as expected. Grace, the assistant, watched Olivia with mild curiosity. There was something unusual about this woman. She read the contract with a surprising familiarity, something uncommon for someone who seemed to have come from the streets. Olivia noticed the look and gave a small smile. "It's a solid contract. Your boss is very thorough, but that's no surprise. Men like him don't leave loose ends," she said in a casual tone. Grace was taken aback but said nothing. Olivia signed the contract with confidence. "Done. Let's get this show on the road," she said, handing the papers back. Olivia was taken to a prestigious beauty salon in the heart of Manhattan. The professionals treated her like a masterpiece in progress, her hair washed, cut, and styled. Her makeup flawlessly applied to enhance her delicate features. Skin treatments that left her looking rejuvenated. At first, she felt awkward with all the attention, but gradually, she began to relax and enjoy herself. "If I'd known I'd be treated like a princess, I would have accepted more crazy offers in my life," she joked, earning laughter from the team. Afterward, she was brought to a high-end couture boutique. She tried on several dresses until she found the perfect one. A floor-length, dark blue silk gown that made her eyes shine even brighter. By the end of the day, Olivia hardly recognized herself. It was as if the version of her that had been buried by the hardships of the past had finally been reborn. At 6 p.m., Ethan arrived at the hotel. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit but seemed distracted, his attention on his phone. The sound of high heels clicking on the marble floor caught his ear, and he looked up and froze. Olivia stood before him, radiant and poised. The dark blue dress hugged her figure flawlessly, and her eyes, now more striking than ever, sparkled under the lights of the lobby. Her hair cascaded in soft waves over her shoulders, and her smile was captivating. For a moment, Ethan was speechless, his lips slightly parted. Finally, he muttered, "Wow." Olivia smiled, amused by his reaction. "I'll take that as a compliment," she teased. Ethan ran a hand across the back of his neck, trying to regain his composure. "Yeah, that was definitely a compliment. You look stunning. You don't even seem like the same person." "Funny, I feel exactly like the same person," she replied, her voice carrying a hint of melancholy. Her words made him pause. Despite everything, there was a depth to her that he didn't fully understand yet. He decided now wasn't the time to delve into it. Well, tomorrow's the big day. The wedding starts at 8 p.m. After that, you'll be free to live your life however you wish, he said, then paused briefly before adding in a softer tone. But honestly, I don't understand how a woman as beautiful as you was hidden under so much dirt. Her smile vanished. Olivia's eyes grew cold for a moment as she stared at him with seriousness. Life hasn't been kind to me, that's all. Ethan felt the tension in the air. He could tell her response concealed deep wounds, but he wasn't about to explore that emotional territory. After all, their arrangement was purely practical. He gave a small nod. I understand. Well, the hair and makeup team will be here tomorrow at 3 p.m. I want you ready by 6. Olivia nodded in agreement. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. He wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he simply gave a brief nod before turning and walking away. As she watched him leave, Olivia felt a mix of curiosity and gratitude. Despite his cold and distant demeanor, there was something about him that wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. When Olivia entered the brightly lit lobby of the Regal Crest Hotel, the sound of footsteps and murmured conversations momentarily stopped. All eyes turned to her, some in admiration, others in curiosity. It wasn't just her beauty that drew their attention. There was something more in the way she walked, an aura of newfound confidence. She, however, felt the weight of every gaze. After years of living in the shadows, being the center of attention made her feel vulnerable. Miss, a male voice called beside her. She turned to see a tall, well-dressed man with a charming smile. He held a drink in one hand and extended the other with an air of confidence. Would you care to join me for a drink? He asked, his eyes appraising her with obvious interest. For a moment, she froze. The transformation had brought something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Being noticed again. She had grown used to hiding in the grime of the streets, where, ironically, she had felt a certain kind of safety in her invisibility. But at the same time, she knew that life on the streets had left her exposed to other dangers. Taking a deep breath, she responded politely, her tone light but firm. Thank you, but I need to rest. It's been a long day. The man inclined his head in a respectful gesture. Of course, but if you change your mind, I'll be around. She offered a faint smile and walked away, still aware of the lingering gazes following her. When she finally reached the elevator and the doors closed behind her, she let out a deep sigh. Back in the suite, Olivia kicked off her high heels and collapsed onto the bed. The day had been exhausting, but something else weighed on her mind. She reached for the contract left on the table. It wasn't just a simple agreement. It was a second chance, a lifeline to rebuild the life she had lost. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she stared at the words on the page. Her thoughts drifted to the past few years. The failure, the cold reality of life on the streets. Every detail still hurt, but she knew she couldn't keep running from it. I won't hide anymore, she thought. She folded the contract and tucked it into a drawer. Rising to her feet, she walked over to the mirror and stared at her reflection. You're not that scared woman anymore. You won't let anyone push you down again, she whispered to herself. Olivia stepped onto the balcony of the suite. The view of Manhattan was mesmerizing, the city lights stretching endlessly in every direction. For a moment, she felt small in the face of such vastness, but another part of her began to rise. It was as if the city itself was daring her to confront her fears. She recalled Ethan's words. After the wedding, you'll be free to live your life however you want. At exactly 5:55 p.m., Ethan arrived at the Regal Crest Hotel lobby. He was dressed in a flawlessly tailored black suit, his wristwatch glinting subtly under the crystal chandeliers. Though he was a man accustomed to luxury, there was a subtle restlessness about him as he waited for Olivia. The sound of high heels echoing across the marble floor drew Ethan's attention. When he lifted his gaze, he saw her descending the staircase with an effortless grace. Olivia was absolutely breathtaking. The dark blue gown clung to her figure like a second skin, accentuating her curves and leaving one shoulder elegantly bare. Her hair was styled in soft waves, and the sparkle in her eyes seemed more intense than ever. For a moment, Ethan forgot where he was. He stood frozen, almost unable to speak. Olivia noticed his reaction and offered a slight smile. Finally, he regained his composure and walked toward her, extending his hand. I'm not sure I'm worthy of your presence. You look incredibly beautiful, he said, his voice low but sincere. A warm sensation coursed through Olivia's body. Ethan wasn't the type to give compliments easily, which made his words hit even harder. Thank you, she replied, feeling strangely comfortable under his gaze. The vulnerability in his expression caught her off guard. For a moment, it felt as though he had let his guard down, and that realization made her look away briefly. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that tonight was just a mission, a contract to fulfill, nothing more. Shall we? She asked. Of course. He gently took her hand and led her to the waiting car. They remained in comfortable silence during the drive, each lost in thought. Ethan found himself developing an unexpected admiration for her, while Olivia tried to stay focused but felt increasingly unprepared for what lay ahead. When the car pulled up to the entrance of a lavish mansion, Olivia exhaled softly. They stepped out together and ascended the marble staircase, elegantly illuminated by torches lining the path. The guests' attention was immediate. Heads turned, and whispers filled the air as they walked inside. Ethan and Olivia were like a mesmerizing vision, effortlessly commanding the room. Who is that woman? A guest whispered, trying to conceal her curiosity. That's Ethan Montgomery. He actually came? I thought he was going to skip the wedding, a man replied. And he brought a goddess with him. Who is she? It's just a move to show Victoria that he's still on top, another man said with a smug tone. Olivia felt the stares cutting into her like blades. She tried to maintain perfect posture, but the tension was overwhelming. Sensing her discomfort, Ethan leaned in slightly and whispered, "Ignore the comments. They've got nothing better to do." She let out a short laugh, some of her nervousness slipping away. "Looks like you're quite the rising celebrity. More like the villain of the story," he replied with a cynical smile. They continued walking along the red carpet leading to the mansion's grand entrance. The stares and murmurs persisted. Olivia couldn't hold back her curiosity any longer and asked, "What's the deal here? Why is everyone staring? What did you do? Are you the crazy black sheep of the rich family?" Ethan chuckled, this time with a more relaxed, almost genuine tone. "No, nothing that dramatic. I'm the ex-fiancée. She left me for another tycoon. Someone with a bit more money than I have." "Ah, that explains it. A classic scandal," Olivia said, now understanding the excessive attention. "Exactly, but I should have seen it coming. Most women who get involved with men like me are always after something." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? And you're not the same? You only approached me because you needed something." Ethan burst out laughing, genuinely amused. "Touché." She smiled, finally starting to relax. Ethan was more human than she had expected. "Well, thanks for sharing that story. Now we can enjoy ourselves. Nothing beats facing drama with a little humor." He looked at her with admiration. "Thank you for that. Honestly, I never imagined that random encounter on the street would lead to moments like this. Even in a situation like this one," she shook her head, smiling softly. "Life's a constant challenge, Ethan. If we don't find reasons to laugh, we'll end up bitter and miserable." The grand hall fell into complete silence. All eyes turned toward the main entrance as Alexander Whitmore made his entrance with a flawless smile. He was impeccably dressed in a classic white suit, radiating the confidence of a powerful and influential man. Olivia, who had been relaxed and cheerful just moments ago, felt the air leave her lungs. Her eyes widened as she caught sight of Alexander. The past she had been desperately trying to bury exploded in her mind like lightning. Flashes of memories hit her. The office meetings, the secret discussions, the arguments, the false accusations, and the ultimate betrayal. It was him. He was here, walking in as if nothing had happened, about to marry Victoria. Beside her, Ethan, unaware of the storm inside her, watched his former rival with a cynical expression. He glanced at Olivia and, in an attempt to keep things light, joked, "So, what do you think? Did my ex-fiancé make a good choice? Is he better looking than me?" But Olivia didn't laugh. She remained frozen, her lips trembling, her eyes locked on Alexander. Ethan noticed immediately that something was wrong. "Olivia, what's going on?" he asked, frowning with concern. She shook her head slowly, her face pale. Struggling to regain control, she took a deep breath and murmured, I'm sorry, but I need to get out of here. Now." Without waiting for a response, Olivia rose quickly and headed toward the service door. Each step made her breathing feel more strained. Ethan, bewildered, got to his feet and hurried after her. He finally caught up to her in a narrow hallway, gently grabbing her arm to stop her. "Olivia, what the hell was that? Tell me what's going on," he demanded, his tone serious but laced with genuine concern. She took a deep breath, fighting back tears as she tried to form a coherent explanation. I don't even know where to start," she said, her voice trembling. Running a hand through her hair, she struggled to organize her thoughts. "The groom, he was my fiancé and business partner." Ethan's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't interrupt her. "I had no idea it was his wedding, Ethan," Olivia continued, her voice almost desperate. "God, I didn't even know he was getting married. And to make things worse, he's marrying your ex-fiancé." She let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "It was her, Victoria. She helped Alexander manipulate me. It all started with a legal case, an important one, but I knew it was a fraud. I told him I wouldn't be a part of it, but they dragged me into it anyway." Ethan remained silent, absorbing every word, a mix of anger and empathy building within him. When the truth came out, our firm was on the brink of collapse. Alexander, he played dirty, really dirty. He tampered with the evidence and pinned the blame on me. He told our clients I was the one responsible. That's when the harassment began. Her voice faltered. He dissolved our partnership and sued me, claiming I had altered documents. I didn't have time to react. I was being threatened, defamed. I was in shock. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't regain control. So, I ran. She paused for a long moment, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. "That's how I ended up on the streets. I hid. I disguised myself as a beggar because I was afraid for my life." Ethan felt his stomach churn. He knew all too well how ruthless the corporate world could be. But hearing it from Olivia was something else entirely. "And yesterday at the hotel, I stared at the contract you gave me. That's when I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't hide anymore. I would face my fears. I would reclaim everything that was rightfully mine." She looked at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. "But I didn't expect it to happen like this. So suddenly, it all came crashing back like an avalanche, and I don't know if I'm ready for this." Ethan gently cupped her face in his hands, his intense gaze meeting hers. "I knew I recognized you, Dr. Harper," he said softly, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "But fate doesn't play around, does it? The moment is here." Olivia blinked slowly, taking in the weight of his words. Ethan continued, his voice steady but comforting. "You don't have to be afraid. All I ever wanted was to find you. And now that we're here, we're going to enjoy this night. We're going to play their game." She felt the warmth of his support spreading through her body, gradually dispelling the lingering chill of fear that still clung to her. He will recognize you, yes. But here's the secret: you don't know him. Don't let him see that you're shaken. Let him feel his own nerves eating away at the control he values so much, Ethan said softly. He took a step closer, lowering his voice as though he were sharing a crucial secret. Tomorrow we'll restart your life, your career. We'll reclaim what's yours, and I'll be with you every step of the way. We're going to win this together, Olivia. His gaze conveyed a confidence she hadn't seen in years. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was facing everything alone. All right, she replied, straightening her shoulders. Determination flickered back to life in her eyes. It's time. They stood silently for a moment, sharing a mutual sense of purpose. It was a moment of unspoken alliance, a decision that neither of them would allow themselves to be intimidated tonight. Ethan extended his arm, and Olivia accepted it with a confident smile. Ready for the dance with wolves? He teased. More than ever, she replied, walking beside him with renewed strength. The ceremony concluded without Olivia and Ethan being noticed by the bride and groom. They had stayed in a discreet area, observing the formalities with a facade of indifference. When applause signaled the end of the vows, they rose and headed toward the main hall for the reception. The ballroom was even more dazzling now. The crystal chandeliers cast shimmering reflections on the elegant gowns and tailored suits of the guests. Olivia walked beside Ethan, maintaining her poised and elegant demeanor. Almost immediately, curious glances and whispered comments began to ripple through the crowd. Who is she? What an enchanting woman, an elderly lady whispered to a friend. She looks familiar. I've seen her face somewhere before, murmured a businessman, frowning in thought. Olivia, however, appeared unaffected by the hushed remarks. She mingled with a group of people, speaking with an ease and charisma that drew their attention. Her laughter came at just the right moments. Her questions were sharp and insightful, and within minutes, she had earned the admiration of many in attendance. But then the recognitions began. Wait, said a middle-aged woman, narrowing her eyes in recognition. Isn't that lawyer? The one who was caught up in that fraud scandal years ago. Another man squinted, trying to recall. Yeah, that's her. Olivia Harper. I remember reading about it. The whispers spread like wildfire. Olivia could feel the rising tension in the air, but she maintained her composure. Ethan noticed the buzz building around them and leaned in to whisper in her ear. Looks like your fame is catching up to you. She gave a slight smile, her eyes sparkling with defiance. Even better. Let them keep talking. It'll make Alexander and Victoria far more uncomfortable. Ethan extended his hand as the music began to play. May I have this dance? He asked with a confident smile. Olivia hesitated for a brief moment but then placed her hand in his. Sure. Let's give the crowd the show they've been waiting for. They made their way to the center of the ballroom, where other couples were already dancing. However, as soon as Olivia and Ethan moved together with grace and perfect synchronization, all eyes turned toward them. Ethan's gaze remained locked on Olivia, and she met his gaze, both of them wearing subtle smiles as though they were the happiest, most confident couple in the room. The chemistry between them was palpable, drawing a curious silence across the hall. It was then that the bride and groom finally noticed them. Alexander, in the middle of a conversation, froze, his eyes widening as he locked onto Olivia. The color drained from his face. Beside him, Victoria noticed his reaction, her confusion quickly turning to tension as she grabbed her husband's arm. The atmosphere in the ballroom shifted dramatically. The music continued, but the murmurs ceased. The guests watched intently, sensing that something significant was unfolding. Ethan leaned slightly toward Olivia and murmured, "They've finally seen us." Perfect. Olivia glanced briefly at Alexander. keeping her expression calm and serene despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. She refused to let it show. "Now the game is in our hands," she replied, maintaining her smile. They continued to dance for a few more moments, ignoring the surprised and tense stares around them. Then, in a carefully timed move, Ethan guided Olivia toward the exit of the ballroom. Alexander watched as Ethan and Olivia disappeared from sight. "They're leaving," Victoria whispered, trying to mask the panic in her voice. "I noticed," Alexander replied, his jaw clenched. He glanced around, as if searching for a way to reach them without drawing more attention. But by the time he managed to free himself from the crowd, Ethan and Olivia had already slipped out through the side doors. Alexander wandered the corridors frantically, but he couldn't find them. He knew this wasn't a coincidence. Something was brewing. "This isn't over," he muttered to himself, the knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. Outside, Ethan and Olivia discreetly stepped into a waiting car. As the doors closed behind them, they both let out deep sighs. "Well, I think we made quite the impression," Ethan said, chuckling softly. Olivia smiled, though her expression carried a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "Yeah, it was intense but necessary. He's thinking about you now. I bet he's already planning his next move," Ethan remarked. "Let him plan all he wants. Tomorrow we start ours," Olivia responded with determination. Ethan nodded, pleased with the strength he saw in her. The game had only just begun, but they both knew they now held the upper hand. The following months were filled with secret meetings, investigations, and strategic networking. Ethan leveraged his influence to open important doors, while Olivia reconnected with former colleagues and advisors who still believed in her. They pored over thousands of documents, including contracts and evidence that Alexander had tampered with. Day by day, the stack of incriminating material against Alexander and Victoria grew stronger. Olivia worked tirelessly, but this time she didn't feel alone. Ethan was always by her side, encouraging her through moments of exhaustion. "It's like a game of chess," Ethan remarked one evening as they reviewed a confidential report. "We're only a few moves away from checkmate." Olivia smiled at his analogy. "This time I'm in control. I won't let him get away." Finally, after months of preparation, they filed a formal request to reopen the fraud case. Olivia's new legal team presented irrefutable evidence to the court, exposing how Alexander and Victoria had forged documents and manipulated witnesses. The media quickly caught wind of the case, bringing the old scandal back to the forefront. Headlines began circulating. "Former partner of Alexander Whitmore seeks justice after years of silence." Olivia Harper, the lawyer challenging the powerful, returns to the spotlight. Alexander tried to downplay the situation, claiming the accusations were baseless, but he couldn't stop the momentum of the investigations. Olivia faced the first hearing with her head held high. She was now a confident, determined woman. Alexander, on the other hand, appeared increasingly under pressure. His lawyers attempted various tactics to delay the trial, but the judges grew impatient with their stalling. The trial was long and tense. Olivia served as one of the key witnesses, recounting in detail how Alexander had orchestrated the fraudulent scheme and used Victoria to deceive clients and manipulate her. During her testimony, Olivia looked directly at Alexander. "You thought you could destroy me, but all you did was strengthen my resolve. Now everyone will see who you really are." Alexander couldn't maintain eye contact. As the trial progressed, the web of lies he and Victoria had spun unraveled under the weight of the evidence. Witnesses who had once feared retaliation began cooperating with Olivia, revealing new details about the crimes the couple had committed. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before delivering their verdict: guilty on charges of fraud, evidence tampering, and perjury. The judge was unwavering in his sentencing. "Alexander Whitmore and Victoria Harrington Whitmore, this court hereby sentences you to 10 years in prison for your crimes. Furthermore, All assets obtained through fraudulent means will be seized and returned to the victims, including the full restitution of Olivia Harper's rightful property. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as the defendants were handcuffed. Alexander cast one final look of hatred toward Olivia, but she merely watched him in silence. There was no longer any fear in her eyes. Night had fallen, and it was time to celebrate. Ethan's terrace offered a breathtaking view of the city lights. The table was elegantly set, adorned with candles and flowers, creating an intimate atmosphere. After months of intense work, victories, and personal transformations, it was the first time in a long while that they could simply breathe and enjoy the moment. As the dinner drew to a close, Ethan fell silent for a few moments, his gaze lingering on Olivia with an intensity that caught her attention. "What is it?" Olivia asked, curious. Ethan set his glass down on the table and gently took her hands in his. "Now that the storm has passed, there's something I need to confess to you." She tilted her head slightly, waiting for his words. "Olivia, I'm completely in love with you." His voice was steady, but full of emotion. "Since the day I saw you walk out of that ballroom, you captured my attention and my admiration." A small smile tugged at her lips as she remembered that moment as if it had happened yesterday. "Over these past months, my life has taken on a new meaning. Seeing your determination, your strength, it's inspiring. But it's more than that. You're beautiful, yes, but what captivates me the most is your zest for life. You make me laugh, even at the smallest things." Tears began to well in her eyes as Ethan gently squeezed her hands. "I love being by your side, and tonight, I want to start a new chapter of my life with you." He took a deep breath, keeping his gaze locked on hers. "Olivia Harper, will you be my girlfriend?" For a moment, Olivia was speechless, tears silently streaming down her face. She laughed through her tears, her heart overflowing with joy. "Yes," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "Yes, Ethan, that's everything I wanted to hear." Without waiting another second, she stood and threw herself into his arms. The world around them seemed to disappear as the embrace sealed the moment. She held him tightly, as if afraid it was all just a dream. Ethan wrapped his arms firmly around her waist, pulling her closer. His fingers gently brushed her face, wiping away the tears that still rolled down her cheeks. "I love you, Olivia," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She closed her eyes and replied softly, "And I love you, Ethan." He moved closer, slowly, until their lips met in a deep, passionate kiss. It was a kiss filled with promises of a future overflowing with love, partnership, and happiness. That moment felt eternal, a testament that both of them had finally found the home they had been searching for in each other. Later, after dancing under the stars and laughing together at stories from the past, they sat at the edge of the terrace, watching the night gradually give way to dawn. "Now, I really believe we're ready for anything," Olivia said, resting her head on Ethan's shoulder. "Always together," he replied, intertwining his fingers with hers. In that moment, they both knew that the future ahead would be shaped by everything they had built together. The storm had passed. Now the sky was clear, full of endless possibilities. The lives of Olivia and Ethan had become everything they had once scarcely dared to dream. Their firm had established itself as a beacon of justice and integrity. They were the perfect team. Olivia, with her sharp intelligence and natural empathy, and Ethan, with his strategic vision and negotiation skills. Together, they achieved significant victories in their careers, but their greatest success was the happiness they shared beyond the spotlight. They traveled the world, laughed in historic cities, danced beneath starry skies in far-off places, and fulfilled many of their dreams. Yet, despite all the grandeur, their most cherished moments were still the quiet ones at home, peaceful dinners, or late-night conversations by the fireplace. Now, 3 years later, Olivia was preparing a special surprise. While Ethan worked in his private office, she quietly entered, holding a small gift box wrapped in golden paper. "What are you up to?" he asked, noticing the mischievous glint in her eyes as she approached. "An out-of-season gift. Go on, open it." Curious, Ethan unwrapped the package. Inside, he found a pair of tiny blue baby shoes, a onesie embroidered with the words, "Daddy, get ready, I'm on my way," and a positive pregnancy test. For a moment, time stood still. Ethan remained silent, staring at the contents of the box as the full meaning sank in. When he finally looked up at Olivia, his eyes glistened with tears. "You," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We're going to have a baby?" Olivia smiled, equally overwhelmed with emotion. "Yes, Ethan, you're going to be a father." He let out a nervous laugh, unable to contain the sheer joy surging within him. Standing abruptly, he pulled her into a tight embrace, spinning her around in the air. "Oh my God, I don't even know what to say. I'm so happy, Olivia," he exclaimed, peppering her face with kisses. "I am too," she replied, her heart feeling light and full of love. They stayed like that for a while, holding each other close, sharing the magical moment that marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Later that evening, they sat together on the terrace of their home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and orange. Ethan held Olivia's hand as they reflected on everything they had been through. "If someone had told me a few years ago that I'd be here with you, about to start a family, I would have laughed in their face," Olivia said, shaking her head in disbelief. "And I probably would have said I didn't need anything beyond my work and my pride," Ethan added with a soft chuckle. They fell into a peaceful silence, gazing at the horizon. Finally, Ethan tightened his grip on her hand and whispered, "Life has been generous to us. Liv, it wasn't easy, but I wouldn't change a thing. Everything we went through brought us to this moment, and I can't wait to begin this new chapter." "Neither can I," she replied. "Are you ready for the challenges of being a dad?" He laughed. "I was born ready, I think. But one thing I do know, with you by my side, I can face anything." She smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. The stars were beginning to emerge in the sky, as if lighting the path toward the bright future awaiting them. They had weathered every storm and were now ready to embrace the fullness of love, family, and dreams fulfilled. There, beneath the gentle glow of the stars, Ethan and Olivia understood a simple yet profound truth. Sometimes, destiny takes us on winding paths so that we can finally find the home we have always been searching for, in the heart of another. If you enjoyed this video, let us know in the comments. Your opinion is very important to us. Don't forget to subscribe. A big hug, and see you in the next video.